Hey there, passive trader. Have you ever wanted to invest alongside a billionaire, to invest in the things that he is investing in, or he or she, as soon as they do it? If yes, then today's your lucky day, because I'm about to share with you what two billionaires are actually investing in right now. So yes, this is a time sensitive episode because they shared exactly what they're thinking and what they're doing. And the part of what they're thinking, I think, is even more important. So even if you watch this later on after the fact, I think that figuring out and learning how they think is going to be helpful for you for the rest of your life, a lot more than exactly what they're investing in right now, even though we do share that as well. Recently, I just got back from a fund conference where we hung out with a lot of other fund managers, and there were some presenters, two of which are actual billionaires, and they blew us away with their presentations. I mean, at least for me, it was awesome. And so I took notes, I combined it, everything that they shared, I combined it into a training that I did for our private coaching clients. What I want to do is I want to share that training with you, or part of it at least, to share that with you so that you could benefit as well. And remember, it's all about how they think. That's the more important thing, but you will get some takeaways on what they're actually investing in right now. Some of that is going to be very surprising, and they actually give you some predictions which were very interesting. And so if you listen to it and you see what they're talking about, you're going to see a new way of looking at the world, a new way of looking at events, putting the pieces together so that you can actually make smarter moves well ahead of the masses. All right, so without further ado, let's get the training started.
Last week, I was at a conference and they had a lot of great speakers, a lot of fund owners, and there were two people that were legit billionaires that they had invited to speak. One of them was John Pennington. The other one was Jim Rogers. Jim Rogers is definitely the more famous. He is the one that he started the quantum fund with George Soros way back when. And at that time, according to him, there were only like 4 or 5 mutual funds or hedge funds in the world at the time. Nobody really knew what a hedge fund was. And so they started that. They made billions of dollars. And then he decided, hey, you know what? I'm done. So he took his money and he left. And then he wanted to travel. And so he was trading his own money. He's investing his own money. And he got a couple of motorcycles for him and his wife, or his girlfriend at the time. And they took those motorcycles and they drove around the world. And then he wrote a book about it, talking about the different stuff that they learned from the travels and the currencies and the macroeconomics and how politics works and how the black market works and all these different things. And I was very young when I read that book, and it opened my eyes. I was like, man, this is the best book I've ever read, because not only did it talk about travel, it also talked about macroeconomics, and it exposed me to that. And I'm like, this makes so much sense. This is awesome. I love how things work. I love how the world works. And then I was like, man, this guy's so rich. How can he travel around the world? What does this guy do? And it found that he's a hedge fund manager. That was the first time I ever heard those. So I'm like, I want to find out what this is. And then I realized, I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a hedge fund manager. And since then, I've always had that in the back of my mind. Eventually, though, I gave it up. I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of work. And I don't know if I want to trade for people and this and that, all the other stuff. And then this conference, when I saw it, I had a ticket from a year ago, but I wasn't going to go. But then they announced that he was going to be the headliner. And I was like, this is it. My fund is launching. This is like fate. It's a full circle. It's going all the way around. This is where I got started with the idea. Now I'm actually doing it. And these guys are going to be speaking. I can see him. I can meet him maybe. So I had to go. And these are the things that I learned from these two fellows. Both of them are very smart. Some of them, they said the same stuff, overlapped. So it was like, man, 2 billionaires saying the same thing. Maybe there's something to that. But you'll see that these are their interpretations. These are thoughts, their theories. Some of this borderlines on conspiracy theory, to be honest. Take it with a grain of salt, see what makes sense. And hopefully that you guys will be able to benefit from this as well. First, his name is, like I said, these are my notes. All the thoughts I put here, they're their thoughts. I'm not sure if I agree or not agree. I'm not talking about that. I'm just reporting on what I heard. I'm not giving you any advice. I'm not selling you anything. The first guy, his name is John Pennington. He got rich by creating a real estate fund. They would buy real estate and lend on real estate, and then they would borrow money to lend on real estate. And the company got so big that they took it public. When they went public, he retired, and now he just sits around and thinks about economic theory and investing his money, of course, but he doesn't really have a day job. So he can think about all this stuff. So we're going to talk about what he said first. The biggest thing that he came up with, you look at everything that's happening in the world. You look at the different news events and they don't make sense, a lot of it. And I'm going to go through some of them. But if you think about it and say, hey, you know what? How are these things all connected? Are they connected? sometimes they start making sense. You have to peel the onion and look under the hood a little bit. And sometimes you have to guess at what's going on, because this guy, he's not in the army or he's not in the politics. He's rich, but he's not that connected where he's in the government. He knows exactly what's going on in all facets, but he can sit back and take a look and try to figure things out. So what he says is that things don't make sense by themselves unless you put them all together, and then they start forming a pattern, and that people in power are not stupid. It doesn't matter who the president is. There's somebody going to be talking about how stupid this person. The Fed has been bashed over and over again on every single one. People are saying how stupid they are, but the media wants us to think that they are stupid, and the talking heads and the gurus need to have somebody to bash. But these people would not have been in these positions unless they were very smart. They didn't wake up yesterday and be appointed to their top position. So that being said, number one thing that John says is that the Fed has the number one mandate. It's to fight inflation. It's not to keep employment low, like they say. Their number one secret mandate is to protect the dollar at all costs. The dollar needs to be used and it needs to be strong. And for the US, the dollar is the best product in the world, if you think about it. It doesn't cost any money to make. They can make as much as they want, and then they can dictate how much it's worth. And when you have something that everybody wants because it's artificially created demand, but that you can set the price and you can make as much as you want, you rule the world. And that's what the dollar allows the US to do. And so the Fed's job, number one, is to make sure that people cannot live without it. And I'm going to go through how they do that. So currently, we've talked a lot about people you hear in the news about the reserve currency. The dollar is going to lose the reserve currency. Currently, 58% of the world's reserve currency is the dollar. All trade, 58% of all trade is done in dollars. Far number two is the euro. The euro comes in at 20%, while China comes in lacking at 2%. So a lot of people, China's going to take over the dollar, the reserve currency. China's going to, no, it's at 2%. So to go from 2% to over 50%, it will take a lot of different things. And you'll see later on what the thought process is there. So the BRICS, right? Let's talk about the BRICS, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. These guys make the BRICS. They've been meeting for years. They're trying to come up with their own currency, trying to replace the dollar. They want to get away from the US. And they've been doing this for years. It's not a new thing. Problem is, according to John, that they don't trust each other. You have all these countries, they have something in common, which is they want to get away from the dollar, but they don't trust each other either. So which country is going to be in charge? Which country is going to be responsible for printing them, for safeguarding the money? Whoever that country is going to be the one that dominates all the other countries. They're going to be number one uno, right? They're going to be player. So people think, it's going to be China. Russia might have a problem with that. India is going to have a problem with that. I don't know about Brazil and South America, but definitely India sees itself as a world player, and Putin doesn't want to be second to anybody. That's the question there. Until they address these issues, BRICS are really a non-issue. Now, we also have Saudi Arabia, right? So Saudi Arabia has been playing very nicely with Russia, but not with the US. And I do want to apologize for something before I go into this. I don't have any pictures. Now, when John did his presentation, he had lots of pictures. He had the actual graphs and quotes and all this stuff. He had the research behind a lot of this stuff. I don't have time to find it. So that's why you only get these slides. But so Saudi Arabia has been not playing very nice with the US, right? They even tried to sell their dollars not in US dollars, or their oil not in dollars. They wanted to sell it in Russian rubles, or they wanted to sell it in Chinese yuan or their own currency, whatever. And so a little while ago, I paid them a visit, and he met with the prince or whichever one was there. And according to the media, nothing really happened. Biden went and there was no reaction at all. There was nothing big that came out of it. So everybody's like, Biden, nobody cares about Biden, just wasted his time. According to John, if he was Biden, he would have gone and talked to the prince in private, and he would have reminded the prince about how they have thousands and thousands of American troops that are living and stationed in Saudi Arabia, protecting Saudi Arabia, basically being the army and defense force for Saudi Arabia, which costs a lot of money. The billions of dollars that we sell them in arms for guns and bombs and planes and drones, all that stuff would go away if the US stopped dealing with Saudi Arabia, and the oil we buy from them would also be going away. And you have to remind some of these people sometimes. And so if Biden had done that, then the smart thing for Saudi Arabia would be to continue to move and stick with the dollar, which is kind of what Saudi Arabia did. Because after this visit, not right after, but shortly after, they transitioned back to the dollar and they shut up. They stopped talking about a different currency. So it was interesting. Again, these are small little items, right? These are news events that you see in the news, but by themselves, maybe they don't mean anything. But as you can see, all of these put together, and I got a whole bunch more, a bigger pattern seems to emerge. Then you have China and Taiwan. So we have imminent, and everybody's talking about it. Even Elon Musk yesterday was talking about it. Oh yeah, China's going to take Taiwan. Maybe it will, but we don't know when. And according to John, it's not happening anytime soon for a number of reasons. So one of the reasons that everybody knows is that the U.S. Navy is the most powerful in the world at this point. It still is. And the Pacific Fleet is the one that is there monitoring. They're around Taiwan, they're around Australia, they're around that whole area, and they will be the first to respond. But that's not the only fleet we have. We have other fleets as well. And we have submarines, which really nobody has like we do. So that is the secret weapon. Currently, it's not the nuclear bomb, it's the submarine, which is interesting. And you want to hang on to that. Remember that point. And the Navy, out of all the Army force, a Navy is the most expensive to maintain with the ships and the sailors and going back and forth and planes and all that stuff. And so there's really nobody else in the world at this point that has committed and is able to keep a Navy as strong as ours. And so that is why the U.S. patrols all the oceans everywhere. If there's pirates, the U.S. will take care of it. And if there's a problem with the Suez Canal or whatever, the U.S. ends up taking care of it. If there is a war with China, right? If they take over Taiwan, the U.S. has said, hey, we're gonna protect Taiwan. If there is a war with China, all Chinese ships everywhere around the world will be under fire. Basically, there'll be a blockade around China. And so they will only be able to ship their stuff over land, which they're trying to do by building all these, what are they called? The Silk Road. They're building these projects to get, transferred over land instead of by sea because they know they don't control the ocean. Right now, all their stuff comes on ships and containers and then goes to different ports. That will stop if there's a war. The U.S. Navy also guarantees the safety of Saudi Arabia's oil. Most of Saudi Arabia's oil and oil generally moves by ship, right? So this is go back to the Saudi one, the Saudi slide, where, hey, Mr. Saudi guy, if you block the dollar, guess what? We're not going to protect your oil ships anymore. So they might be attacked by pirates or other countries or whatnot, because Saudi, you don't really get along with Iran very much. Iran has a navy, but you, Saudi, you don't. So who's going to protect your ships from Iran? So these are all little things that we need to keep in mind. So that's that. We have Russia. Okay, so Russia claimed recently that it's under attack and it will fight back with nuclear weapons. Now, most people, you think of that as, oh man, he's talking about Ukraine. Putin's talking about, no, Putin was not talking about Ukraine. Putin was talking about something else. So the Nord Stream pipeline, if you guys know what that is, was a oil and gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. Now, Trump had made a big deal about it, said, no, they shouldn't have this pipeline. Germany should not allow it, blah, blah, blah. But it went through anyway. Russia built it. Germany was okay with it. And it was sending gas and oil from Russia to Europe. But then something funny happened. The thing blew up. Boom. Now there's this huge pipeline, massively buried under the sea or under the ocean. It's at the bottom. I don't know if it's on the floor or it's under whatever it is, but now it's not usable. Somebody blew it up. Who the heck would blow it up? Who has the power to blow up a pipeline at the bottom of the ocean? I don't know. Was it the sharks? Probably not, right? Who would think? Who knows? And so now you have Russia saying, hey, you can't do that. I'm going to attack. So who is Russia talking to? And was that another signal to Russia and China and Saudi Arabia that, hey, look, these, like I said, could be conspiracy theory, could be true. Who knows, right? We also had Biden canceling the Keystone Pipeline. So this was something that was started, again, I think it was under the Obama administration. They were looking at it, then they stopped it, and then it got approved later on. I think under Trump approved it, and then now Biden canceled it again. Why would he do that? Why would he not buy oil from Canada? It doesn't make any sense. Canada is our partner. They're like the quasi 50 state, right? They're not causing us any problems. It's cheaper. It's right here. We can get all the oil we need and become energy independent. We don't have to buy any oil from Saudi Arabia anymore. We have enough oil between what we produce and Canada to be self-sufficient. Why would he do that? Without the pipeline, we still buy oil from Saudi Arabia, but we pay it in dollars. We tell them what we're going to pay it for it. We give them our dollars that they have to then go and use and spend, and they have to proliferate the dollar. So it makes the dollar stronger. Does that make sense? So it gives them another reason to stick to the dollar. Then we have here. Okay, so we got the Keystone Pipeline, and then I think I'm missing something. Okay, so I'm missing a slide here. What about anything else that could challenge the dollar? How about Bitcoin challenge the dollar? That's what a lot of people have been saying. That's why Bitcoin was created, so that no one currency, no one country could control the currencies. John, I went to this conference last year as well, and John did a talk of what he calls the coin cage. And there is a video on a YouTube channel about the Bitcoin cage, where it talks about how possibly the Fed is manipulating the price of Bitcoin because they don't want any competition. And how Bitcoin is so small that it's very easy for the Fed to manipulate. And so for that reason, if that is true, Bitcoin is really not going to go up in price very much. It might go down, but it's just going to hang around, and it's never going to be able to replace the dollar. So that is something, if you guys watch, you can watch that as well. Now we go to gold, right? So if you go back in history to World War II, the US had all the gold. And so automatically there was negotiations involved, but the US and the dollar became the reserve currency. And the US had all the gold. That's why the United Nations is in New York. That's why everybody does everything in dollars. And so it was the strongest currency at the end. It was backed by gold. So you could actually go to the government and you could say, here's my dollar. I want $1 worth of gold. And they would give it to you. At one time, though, it became illegal for people, individuals, citizens to own gold. It was illegal for you to have gold. It was illegal for you to have bullion. Why? If gold is backed, if the dollar is backed by gold, why can't I own gold? Why? Because the US government was printing like crazy. They had the power. They're like, oh, we're in charge. We can do whatever we want. Yeah, nobody knows how much gold we have. Let's just print as much as we want of this stuff. And they've started printing and printing. Other people noticed this. And so at one time, they sent 2 ships to Manhattan. And they said, hey, we got all these dollars. We want to exchange it for gold. Please take the dollar, give us the gold, load it up on our ships, and then we're going to go back to France. And then the next day, literally the next day, Nixon goes on TV. I think it was on TV or the radio, I'm not sure. And he announces that the US is going to temporarily stop giving out gold for dollars. He took us off the gold standard, and it was supposed to be temporary. Okay. So they were gold backed. That went away. We never went back to the gold standard. Now we are what they call petrodollar, because all of oil has to be traded in dollars. They just have to. So if there's a country, let's say, I don't know, Sweden. Sweden wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. They don't go to Saudi Arabia and say, here's money, give us the oil. They have to come to agreement with Saudi Arabia. Then they have to go to the treasury or the Federal, somebody in the US to buy dollars. They have to exchange their own currency into dollars. Those dollars then get shifted into the Saudi Arabia account in the US. And then Saudi Arabia then sends the oil to Sweden. So all the currencies, all the exchanges, everything in oil has to be done in dollars. So that's why they call it petrodollar. Right. And the US wants to make sure that continues. So we have now the next iteration. So we do have no longer gold backed by anything. So what else is going to happen, right? Now, in the past, when it became illegal to have gold, what was the reason? Why they say, hey, you know what? We don't want people to have gold. Number one, because they were printing too much and they didn't want that. But the government claimed at that time that it was only the crooks, the thieves, the mobsters, the mafia that was using gold. Normal people, everyday human people, you and me, we don't need gold. Why would you need gold? You're just a normal guy. You can just use your dollars, your cash. It's lighter. It's easier to carry. You're going to carry all this gold. You can get stolen. You got to store it. Like, do that. You don't need that stuff. Just use dollars. Just use cash. And just use paper. And only the crooks are the ones that are using gold. So that's why we're making it illegal for anybody to have gold, because we want to stop the crooks. That was the reason. And now we have the next iteration, which is the US digital currency. So now this is the future, right? A digital currency like a US crypto would be cheaper to make, easier to control, easier to create. And it even goes a little bit further. It can track everybody and everything. It can track everything you do, everything you buy, everything you use, everywhere you go. This is like deep conspiracy. Like they could track every single thing that you do. They could probably shut it off and on if they wanted to. They could make your money, if you're wanted by the government or whatever, they could be like, oh yeah, this guy's money can't be used. Boom. There's a switch. And all of a sudden you're broke. You have no money. You can't do anything with it. I'm laughing, but it's scary. It's really scary. Now, according to John, At first, the government's going to say, hey, look, we're coming out with this new currency. You can use either one. You can use cash. You can use your dollars, or you can use the new digital currency. It's just going to be easier for you. It's like a credit card. You don't have to use it. It's real simple. It's much easier to maintain. It'll be cheaper. Everybody can use it. You have a choice. You can do this one or this one. But eventually, there will come a time where they are going to say, hey, you know what? You know who the only people are that use cash? Drug dealers, smugglers, mobsters, crooks, right? Sound familiar? And at that point, they will outlaw all fiat cash currency. You won't be able to have it anymore. You have to turn it into the government and they will give you whatever digital currency they come up with. Stuff like this is already happening. India did this a few years ago. They got rid of all their bigger denominations. So they had, I don't know what it was, like a 10,000 rupee bill, and they made everybody turn that into the government. And then you got smaller bills because they were saying that only the smugglers and the crooks were using the bigger bills. So everybody had to get rid of their smaller bill. Pain in the butt, but they're doing this. Jim Rogers, right, the other billionaire, he later mentioned that China is already doing the digital currency. They already have one, and you have to use it. If you want to buy ice cream, you want to go on a taxi, you want to do something small, they don't take fiat cash anymore. You have to use the digital currency because it's coming. So if they're doing it, they're pioneering it. The U.S. is probably watching them, copying them. They're going to do the same thing. And then one more thing, notice we have a banking crisis right now, right? Banks are failing. Banks are in trouble. Some banks are getting bailed out. Some banks are failing. Who decides? The Fed. Which banks are being allowed to fail? The ones that deal with crypto. Why? Fed doesn't want any competition, right? They don't want to continue to waste their time and effort manipulating Bitcoin and all that stuff. They can take out the banks, then nobody's going to be trading it. You won't be able to. It's just going to die on its own. According to John, Biden's biggest mistake. The biggest mistake he's made is that he kicked Russia off of SWIFT. Now, SWIFT is basically the banking system where all transactions are conducted in dollars. So if Russia needs to send money to Saudi Arabia, needs to send money somewhere else, everything is conducted in dollars. And Russia was kicked off of this as part of the sanctions. So if you are an ally of the United States, or if you're a neutral country, you're like, man, they don't like Russia. They kicked them off of SWIFT. That just made it really difficult for Russia to do business with anyone. They could do the same thing for us if they don't like us. We get another crazy president, they could kick us off, and it's not a good thing. So that did give the BRICS and other countries more reason to think about, hey, we need a separate currency. We need our own thing. We don't want the U.S. to be in control anymore. So that was a big mistake. I don't know if they're going to what they're going to do with it or what the future is going to be, but that was what John said. Now, one more big thing is the Fed. Inflation, right? If you watch the news, you watch any of these stock shows, everybody was saying the same thing. Oh, the Fed is behind the curve. Fed is behind. They fell asleep at the switch. They're supposed to keep inflation down, but they didn't do anything. They let inflation get all the way up to 9%. And then they started raising rates, and they're raising rates so quickly, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's bashing. Why would the Fed allow inflation? Now, they have more data than anybody else. They know what's happening. Right? They get the data first. Why would they allow for inflation? So inflation results in higher prices, right? Everything goes up. That leads to people buying fewer things, which leads to a recession. Would the Fed actually want us to go into a recession? I don't know. If we go into a recession, we buy even less things because people are getting laid off. They're not making much. They're being careful. They're not making frivolous expenses and frivolous spending. So they buy even less things. And where does most of our stuff come from? Most of the stuff in your house, in the store, any store you go to, where does it come from? In China, made in China. So if we stop buying stuff, China suffers. Chinese people get laid off because they don't have enough manufacturing. Already now, you can look this up. Men in the 16 to 25 age group, their unemployment rate is 25%. China's economy is not doing as well as they say they are. China says unemployment is 5%. But this age group, males 16 to 25 or so, 25% unemployment. This is the group that causes revolution. This is the group that gets angry. You look at the Arab Spring, you look at the French Revolution, you look at the Russian thingy, you look at the Tiananmen Square. Who are all those people? They're youngsters. People in their 40s, 50s, 60s. They don't have a revolution. It's these guys who don't have a job, have nothing else to do. They're angry. They're young. They feel they can do anything. They're the ones that start revolutions. So if America tightens the belt on spending, China suffers dramatically. China might go into a recession. China might go down. Chinese, they have a lot of people that they need to feed. They have a lot more things to worry about than Taiwan. Does that make sense? And then handling this, what are the Chinese going to do? They're going to be going into debt to feed their people. They don't want these guys on the streets. They don't want all these men to be angry and meeting and talking. They want them to be happy. And so they might just get their money and have lockdown, COVID lockdown, zero COVID policy. Oh, but that was no meetings, no get togethers, zero COVID. Yeah. See, stuff starts to make sense. Why do we have zero COVID 3 years or 2 years after COVID went away? Interesting. See, okay. All right. So that was John Penny. I agree. A little bit conspiracy, but starts to make sense. And I was going to Jim Rogers. So Jim here, he was a partner with George Soros of the Quantum Fund. They made billions together. And then he took his money and he left, literally. And he went around the world twice. I told you that he had one book where he motorcycles and he went around the world. A few years later, he got married and he got a car and they drove around the world for their honeymoon. And he wrote a book about that too. Both of them, I highly recommend both those books. And now he manages his own money and he's getting up there, right? But this guy is wicked smart. Very smart guy. And his mantra is you find where the money is, you go and you pick it up. Working, overrated. Trading, market timing, nah, he doesn't do it. He's an investor. So he finds something that if it's really cheap and it's cheaper than it costs or cheaper than it should be, he'll go and he'll buy it and he'll sit and wait till the price goes up. That's how he made all his money. When there are problems, that's where he invests. Right after a country has a revolution, right after a country finishes a war, that's where he says is the most opportunity because that's when everything is cheap. That's when their most spending happens because they have to rebuild everything. So he goes into those areas and he buys. So what does he think? What is he investing in right now? Not much. According to him, everything is very expensive right now. So he's not buying much at all. He's doing a few things. What he is doing is he is buying Japanese ETFs. So currently, according to him, the Bank of Japan, kind of like the Fed, they're printing money all day long. That's all they do. They're printing money. They're using that money to prop up the Japanese stock market. So they're buying Japanese stocks. And so he's, hey, you got this buyer, you got this floor in the market. Why don't I just buy stocks too? So he's buying Japanese ETFs and he's going to keep buying them and holding them until the Bank of Japan stops. Because when it stops buying them, they're going to, right? Because there's nobody else left to buy. So that's his strategy there. He's also buying stocks in Uzbekistan, maybe even in Kazakhstan. Now, I know that's not something that we're going to be doing, most likely for most of us, but that's what he said. And then he's looking at things that are falling in price. They haven't reached the bottom yet, like commodities. So he's like, a lot of commodities are getting much cheaper, like sugar. He's like thinking of getting in once it reaches the bottom. Now, he also wrote, Jim Rogers did a book on commodities and the super cycle of commodities and whatnot. So if you're interested in that, pick that book up. It was really good. What else did he say? He said that the yuan, which is the Chinese currency, he said it will not ever be the world's reserve currency because it's not convertible into others. That's a Chinese issue. They don't want to be converting it for some reason. So the yuan will never be reserve currency. And then he says that all countries are working on a digital currency. So we heard that with the first speaker, right? That the US is working on a digital currency. China has a digital currency already that is being forced. Because of that, crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all those, there's no need for them. And they're going to be going to zero because the countries will simply not allow them. So that's his thought process on that. All cryptos are going to zero. And then somebody did ask him a question about AI. So he did say AI is going to be huge, but he doesn't know how to invest in it yet. Okay. Now, the biggest takeaway, this is his biggest emphasis and probably the most important for all of us, that the next bear market, when it comes, he doesn't know when it comes, but the next bear market is going to be the worst of his life. It's going to be even worse than 08, 09 with the Great Recession. It's going to be much bigger than that. And the reason is because there is way debt than back then. Consumers have more debt. Countries have more debt. The world has more debt. It's just there's a lot more spending, a lot more debt than ever before. Europe has debt. At that time, in 08, 09, China had no debt at all. They didn't have any debt. They were running at surplus. Now they have debt, which they did not have before. So really, who's going to come to save us? If there is a bear market, if there's a downturn, nobody's going to be able to save us. It's going to be every country for them. He doesn't know when this is going to happen, but the one tip he gave to know when this has happened is right before it's going to happen, there will most likely be a blow-off market top, meaning that the market is just going to shoot up and it's going to go hyperbolic at some point, and then it's going to stop, turn around, and then drop. So that is the signal for most downturns, most bear markets, is that the market is going to rally and it's going to get exhausted. But before it gets exhausted, it just goes crazy because everybody's like, oh, man, you got to get in. It's FOMO, fear of missing out, over and over. Everybody's just putting all their money in. Then there's nobody left to buy and the thing just free falls.